I want to talk just for a very few minutes today about something that's been on my mind and on my heart. We so easily forget how fortunate we are to live in a country like America. I wish all of our world's neighbors were as fortunate as we are, but they're not. And we can't lose sight of that fact. I don't know why bad things happen to good people, and I'm not suggesting that I have a complete solution to it, but trying to understand it is at least a good first step. I'm talking about the ongoing crisis in South Sudan. As you know, South Sudan it's a landlocked country in East Central Africa. And it's a fairly new country. In the 7 years since South Sudan was plunged into a very bloody civil war, not only have millions of people been displaced from their homes, but over 400,000, think about that, men, women, and children have been killed in the crossfire. 400,000. I would like nothing more than for the recent negotiated ceasefire between the government and the rebels to hold. We all would. But if we're being honest, we have to express our sincere doubts. I don't have any doubt that the people of South Sudan yearn for peace. Unfortunately, there are some who are taking advantage of the sad situation in South Sudan. They're taking advantage of South Sudan's conflicts and widespread corruption within its government in order to steal the nation's and the people's natural resources. I'm talking about kleptocrats. I'm talking about war criminals. I'm talking about corrupt multinational corporations that are pilfering South Sudan's natural resources regardless of the chaos that they are causing and the extraordinary human cost. Until good people, Mr. President, in this world take a stand and say enough is enough, the people of South Sudan will continue to be at the mercy of the corrupt. The predatory extraction of South Sudan's resources not only directs vital capital outside of the war-torn nation, where it's desperately needed, inside, but it makes meaningful investment in sustained peace simply impossible. That's why, Mr. President, I am respectfully calling on the United States Senate to stand with peace, to stand with right, not with might, with right, and to stand with the people of South Sudan. The people of South Sudan are a proud people. They're a resilient people. They're tired of being ruled by a government that is rife with corruption. They're tired of seeing their nation torn apart by war. The United States Senate ought to condemn the marauding, the stealing of resources, the widespread corruption within the South Sudanese government. Furthermore, I also call on the United States to support sanctions against those companies and those individuals outside of South Sudan that continue to profit off of the ongoing conflicts and instability in the region. Now, we're a powerful nation, Mr. President. I just listened to your very eloquent talk about the men and women in our military that protect our country. Not only do we have the world's most powerful military, let me put it another way, we have the most powerful military in all of human history. We also have the strongest economy the world has ever seen, and for that we are blessed. And it's the latter, Mr. President, that we have to wield against the internal and the external bad actors taking advantage of the people of South Sudan. Much like our sanctions against the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. I am, of course, talking about Iran. Much like those sanctions have resulted in a successful economic pressure campaign, I hope that the same can be done targeting crooked government officials and the unethical multinational corporations that target vulnerable nations like South Sudan. Mr. President, it's been well documented that there are a number of multinational corporations with ties to nations like China, to nations like Malaysia, that have taken advantage of the widespread corruption in the region, in South Sudan and the surrounding region, to spur their own economic and political gain. It's been reported, and it's been independently verified, that one of South Sudan's largest multinational petroleum consortiums from outside the country, operating in the country, a company called Dar Petroleum Operating Company, has actively funded militia and paramilitary groups within the region. In fact, when Dar Petroleum isn't funding militia or brokering weapons deals, it keeps busy polluting local communities in South Sudan and water supplies with its industrial waste. The petroleum company has dumped, quote, huge, or rather high levels of heavy metals and dangerous chemical compounds, close quote, into the surrounding countryside with no regard, none, zero, no regard for local populations. In fact, the contamination from the joint Chinese-Malaysian-owned corporation has extended well beyond merely the soil surrounding Dar Petroleum's production and processing plants. The soil contamination is found to be so widespread, so extensive, Mr. President, that over 600,000 of the good people in South Sudan are expected to be affected by it. From bribery, from pollution, and even murder, these unsavory actors have found a home in South Sudan, ruining the environment, raping the natural resources of the country, and they're going to continue to find a safe haven and continue business unless we act. Unless sanctions against countries and individuals that are known to have long taken advantage of South Sudan's weak or almost non-existent rule of law, unless those are implemented, stability in the region is going to be nothing but a dream, nothing but happy talk. The United States should not remain silent as untold billions are stolen, and the money's being stolen. The natural resources are being stolen from the people of South Sudan. And the people of South Sudan are also being murdered in the process. We should not stand by, Mr. President. By empowering the United States government to target the illicit financial activity that serves as the root cause for many of the atrocities that I have talked about, the South Sudanese can begin rebuilding their nation without fear of violence and without fear of corruption. The United States is far from the only government on the world stage that has the ability to do this. Now, we both know that, Mr. President. But as is so often the case, we might be the only government with the will and the moral conviction to do what is right. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.